Hello students, today we are going to discuss a very most important phase of Indian history, that is about the history of a dynasty named Satavahana dynasty which succeeded Mauryas. It should be told that in the post-Mauryan era in Indian history, India was ruled by a large number of foreigners. The most important native dynasty which held sway over a vast empire was the Satavahana Empire. I must also bring to your notice that it has been discussed at many places that the Satavahanas ruled from Andhra Pradesh for about 400 years from 220 BC to 21 AD. Should be told that it is true that Satavahanas has lot of connections with Andhra, but their rule is not exactly originated from Andhra. There is a controversy, a difference opinion about the original home of Satavahanas. The very name of Satavahana means Satavahana is a Sanskritized form of Satakarni. Satakarni derives from Seda and Kan. The name is combination of the two Indo-Austric Munda words Seda and Kan. Seda means horse and Kan means son. The compound then reads son of the horse occupying on the same some of the coins of the Satavahana kings. It should be understood that the association of horse is not pre-Aryan and it is post-Aryan. So, the Satavahanas are of post-Aryan period which ruled this country, and these Satavahanas are also to be named as Satakarni, that meaning having about 100 years. Sata means 100. There is a story of Kannagi prevailing in Tamil Nadu. The story reads thus: one of the king of the early Sangama dynasties of Tamil Nadu had insulted and was responsible for taking away life of one of the subjects in his country. So, when he was punished of a wrong implications of forgery, so he was killed. The wife of that man has complained to the king that her husband was killed though he was an innocent, and she curses the king. So, when the king asked how to overcome this curse, he was told to erect a structure of a stone which they should bring from north. So, this king travelled from Tamil Nadu via Andhra, and it is said that one of the Satavahana king, who is named as in Tamil as Nuruvura Kannan. Nuruvura Kannan means Satakarni. So, the name Nuruvur Kannan is given to Satakarni probably because the administrative structure of Satakarni, Satavahanas, is so vast that they had a very vast administrative structure. That means the heirs are the administrative authorities. That is how we have the names of this particular Satavahana in the Tamil Sangama literature. No doubt, Satavahanas have a great contribution to make to both Andhra and Indian history from point of view of art and architecture and cultural edifices. I am giving you the list of the kings who ruled this country, the names of the dynasty kings, starting with Simukha Satakarni, who was the founder of the dynasty, followed by Krishna. So, you can see names, about 26 of them, the 26th being the Yagnasri Satakarni. Gautami Putra Satakarni ruled around say 106 to 130 according to the opinion of R. S. Sharma, and others it was 78 AD to 120 AD. And Gautami Putra Satakarni is supposed to have controlled a vast territory and is also titled as Trisamudra Toya Pitika. The meaning Trisamudra means three seas, samudras, that is horses supposed to have Toya Pitika, horses supposed to have taken the water of the three seas, that he had conquered a vast territory extending to all the three seas. So, the very reason why I said it is it was Satakarni who actually brought Andhra under his control. Early to that, it can be said that the Satavahana's earliest inscriptions we find from the time of Vasishtiputra Satakarni, and Vasishtiputra Satakarni or Vasishtiputra Putra Satakarni belongs, that is Pulamavi 102 to 130 according to one tradition, and this Pulamavi are 130 to 154 AD according to other tradition. So, these Pulamavi inscriptions are to be found in Andhra, but the coins belonging to the early Satavahanas were also found in Andhra, especially in Kondapur. So, going by the evidences of the coins, it may be said that the early Satavahanas were ruling in Telangana and they held a sway in other parts such as the Maharashtra region, Karnataka region. And there the contemporary rulers of Satavahanas were the Sekas or Satraps, and they had a conflict with the Satas and Satraps. And in this conflict, our people, the Satavahanas, lost their region control over Maharashtra and also in Karnataka. And from there, they came back to Andhra region, and it is at that point of time they held a sway over Dharnikota and the coastal Andhra region. And at this stage, Satavahanas, when they dispersed their dominions in the hands of the Sekas in Maharashtra, the fortunes of the family were restored by Gautami Putra Satakarni, who ruled between 106 AD to 130 AD, who called himself as the only Brahmana. He defeated Sekas and destroyed many Kshatrapa rulers, defeated Nahapana, a Kshatrapa ruler, and about 8,000 coins of Nahapana were found near Nasik as restruck with the name of Gautami Putra Satakarni, which means he defeated Nahapana. But after Nahapana, it is said that once again, after the Nahapana, after Gautami Putra Satakarni, you find that Satavahanas lost their territories of Maharashtra and Karnataka. So, that is how we find a seesaw between Sekas and the Satavahanas. Satavahanas continued to rule. Actually, Pulumavi ruled both from Pratisthana Pura in Maharashtra and from Dharnikota. Dharnikota was his second capital, and another great king of Satavahanas, Yagnasri Satakarni, supposed to be the 26th king who ruled between 174 to 203 AD, is supposed to be the last greatest kings of the Satavahana. He is the 26th king, and it is he has patronized the greatest Buddhist philosopher Acharya Nagarjuna, who is the greatest exponent of medicine, astronomy, mathematics and philosophy. It was he who developed a new school of Buddhist philosophy that is called Mahayana Buddhism. It is this Mahayana Buddhism which became world popular, spread over to Indonesia, Siam, Ceylon and several other countries in the world. There is a interesting opinions about Satavahana religious practices. It is said that Gautami Putra Satakarni has performed several Hindus Vedic sacrifices, that is Ashwamedha Yagna and several other yagnas, and on account of this they were greatest patrons of Hinduism, and they were also styled themselves as Eka Brahmana, the only Brahmin or the one who has given protection to Brahmins. But it does not mean that they are only patronizing Brahminism. They also gave lot of support to Buddhist religion. The most interesting detail about Satavahana relates to their family structure. In the Aryan society of the North India, generally we find the greater importance given to the father, but whereas we find more importance given to Satavahanas, which means that Satavahanas were of matrilineal in practice. The names of these Satavahana kings are styled after their names of the mothers, such as Gautami Putra Satakarni or Yagnasri Satakarni. So, that is how we find the matrilineal kind of structure we find at the time of Satavahanas. We also find during this time that economic activity was very much flourishing. The economic activity being the most important being agriculture. We find different kinds of villages. The first kind of village is totally housed by a single guild or caste communities. Either it could be blacksmiths, goldsmiths, weavers. So, only one craft guild is to be dwelled there. but in some villages there is a mixed caste kind of a thing, another is kind of a suburban kind of a thing, 3 categories, and most of the villages are walled. Inside the walls you find the various people living there of different communities, but we also find untouchables living outside these walled, they are called chandalas, untouchables. Untouchability was practiced during this time. So, agriculture, as I told you, was flourishing. That is why Dharnikota was originally called as Dhanya Kataka, Denu Kataka, and this Dhanya Kataka was rich in production of rice, because it was there on the mouths of the river Krishna, and it was watered by Krishna waters, and you find that lush paddy cultivation was taking place. It was with this abundance availability of paddy that the Satavahanas were able to raise a very big army, and with that army only they were able to regain the territories which they lost in the hands of the western satraps. And after the paddy they were also cultivating cotton. The most of the important trade with Rome was taking place only with the textiles, and several places such as Vinikonda, Nagarjunakonda, Masilipatnam were rich in trade in this kind of a weaving items, textiles. And it should be told that the crops, the weaving items, and the pottery, blacksmiths, goldsmiths, they were all there, kamaras, they were all named as kamaras, that is the people involved in various metals, goldsmiths, Suvarnakars, and other communities were living, and they all developed into what is called guild system, and the guilds had a head, and the heads of these guilds were appointed by the state, and they had their own guild regulations, and they have also to be followed certain standards, and it is very much administratively neat with the center. And the feudal kind of a structure also emerged during the time of Satavahana. It should be said that some of the villages were under the control of senapatis, and they are also called provincial governors, and the senapatis had a control over an army, military regiment consisting of each senapati with 9 chariots, 9 elephants, 21 horsemen, and 45 foot soldiers, and they had also the right to collect the tax in that area. And also the Satavahanas gave patronage to the Vedic priests as well as Buddhist monks. Several villages and lands in the villages are donated to these monks, and these monks, when they got control over these lands, it is said that the royal armies cannot enter these, and they cannot disturb the life of in these villages. That is how they enjoyed a kind of a independence. So, that is how you can see a feudal kind of structure emerging during this time. And we also notice that the Buddhist monks who are supported by these people, that is Satavahana kings, is purely on account of their greater importance connected with the international trade. The large number of Roman merchants settled in Dharnikota and other places, and the testimony of this can be said that large number of gold coins were supposed to be found to be present in large quantities in several places in the coastal districts, especially in Krishna and Godavari regions. The vast seaborne trade between the west and the coastal Andhra is attested between the period 68 AD to 207 AD, from the death of Nero to Karakkala. The coins belonging to pre-Nero times were found in areas which provided luxury goods. During the post-Nero period, the trade with Rome includes the place of Andhra, mostly cotton growing areas such as Vinikonda, Nagarjunakonda, Kadapa, Nellore, Vijayawada, Ghantasala, and Salihundam. The gold coins found at Vinikonda belong to Roman emperors such as Vespasian and Domitian, Hadrian, Antiochus, Pions, and Fastian Elder. And like that we find large number of gold coins coming from this, and we find that unrestrained indulgence in the Indian luxuries shocked the sober-minded citizens like Pliny. He wrote in 70 AD, the Indian goods were sold in Roman market at 100 times their manufactured price. He protested against this. He stated that 100 billion sesterces, amounting to 11 lakh sterling pounds of gold pieces, were withdrawn from the empire, and out of which 5 lakh sesterces entered India, and a majority of it has come to Andhra. On account of this, we find Satavahana dynasty becoming very rich. So, all these coins that were coming, they were brought by the merchants from the Roman Empire, and these merchants, if they want, several of them settled in Dharnikota and several other places. If they have to settle in this region, they cannot be accepted into any kind of a social order prevailing in India, that is the Vedic social order, Brahminical social order. The only way out for them is to enter into Buddhism. So, many of them were given that kind of a solace by the Buddhist monks. So, they were in very close contact with the Buddhist monks, and some of the caves that you find in the Krishna and Godavari regions, especially in Amaravati, what you find is these monks where they dwelled, that is the Amaravati Stupa and the caves surrounding that region where the monks lived. It appears that lot of gold coins were placed in those caves, and these Buddhist monks also entertained what is called a trading of usuring the money, giving money for interest, and they have advanced money to the Indian merchants, and they also collected interest. That is how the Buddhist monks and those centers of Buddhist centers of learning have become an important center of finance accumulation. And that is why, since money is there with these Buddhist monks, it appears that Acharya Nagarjuna at difficult times has supported Yajnasri Satakarni, and so the Satavahanas gave a lot of patronage to Buddhist monks because they are in very close terms with the Roman traders and merchants. So, this explains the background as to how the Buddhism flourished in Andhra at the time of Satavahanas. And the Satavahanas, with the lot of money that they had, were able to raise a big army and have a great cultural and political sway during the contemporary times. And the Satavahana Empire declined with the decline of the Roman trade. So, that is how we find the Satavahana's role as an important phase in the Indian history. We find Satavahanas have contributed a lot to Indian art and architecture, to sculpture, and we also see that there is a lot of advancement of several arts and crafts. And I also explained to you that the guildsmen and the heads of the guilds enjoyed a greater superiority and independence. And Satavahanas declined, as I told you, with the decline of the Roman trade. And we find in the post-Satavahana period, the feudatory of Satavahanas, they declared independence, such as Ikshvakus, Salankayanas, Bhutpalayanas, and others. And the Satavahanas definitely had contributed a lot in the spread of Buddhism, in erecting lot of Buddhist monuments in several places. Namely, we find at Salihundam, at Ghantasala, Bhattibrolu, Nagarjunakonda, Amaravati, and other places. And thus, the Satavahana history remains as an important facet in the history of India in general and Andhra in particular. Thank you.